Garrett Smith again. Sorry, oh, I don't know if that caught that. So, hi everybody, this is Dr. Garrett Smith again, doing another Facebook Live. As you saw from the description, today I'm going to be covering some things about the blue zones, which is areas of the world where there are the most centenarians, which means people who have lived to 100 across the board. So they have the most on average as a group. So this is kind of important, right? Because results leave clues, or success leaves clues. We want to look at the longest lived people to see what they're doing and see what things we can do in our day-to-day life to mimic that. And I'm going to tell you that the reasons why they're living longer is because they're getting really good food and they're doing things specifically in their diet that prevent iron overload, and they're doing things that help prevent vitamin C deficiency. And they're also not doing silly things like us Westerners are doing, like taking vitamin D supplements, but that's not really mentioned. So, anyway, so let's go into this. So first I like to say, I am a licensed naturopathic physician in the state of Arizona. I am a doctor. I am not your doctor unless you're working with me. So, if you decide to take any advice that I say on this and run with it and do things, and then come back and say, well, Dr. Smith said to do it, no, I didn't say for you to do anything. Every person is different. Just because I say these things generally work, well, I like a little saying called the exception proves the rule. So I'm not saying to do anything without my guidance. I'm saying these are the things that people are doing. So if you choose to do them, you're an adult, you're making your own choices. That's on you. So next, if you want to reach me to work with me, ways you can do that, nutritionrestored.com. Julie is my wonderful office manager extraordinaire. She can be reached at admin@nutritionrestored.com. Our phone number is 520-577-6888. And those are ways you can get a hold of us if you want to work with me after this. So I have some pages pulled up here. I'm going to pull the links and post the links in the description after I'm done, because I couldn't do it on my phone. It was just too much work. So anyway, I'm going to be reading things from the dietary guidelines of the blue zones, and I'm going to be telling you, first I wanted to tell you where are these magical blue zones. I did look that up. I thought I did. There they are. So 5 of them were, one was Okinawa, Japan. One was Icaria, Greece. I want to make sure I pronounce it right, but I don't know how at this moment. Sardinia, Italy. Nicoya, Costa Rica, and Loma Linda, California. Smaller groups of people. These are not big cities. I'm not so sure about the Loma Linda, California. I think they might have added that one trying to squeeze a U.S. city in there to help fit the narrative of like, oh, some U.S. people are doing okay too. But anyway. Oh, I think that might be the Seventh-day Adventists. I'm not sure. But anyway. So then we go to the food guidelines. And I'm going to put these up on links when we're done. So they have 10 guidelines. There's a PDF and there's a link. The first thing that they talk about. Well, first of all, know that the quality of your food, of your plant-based foods, is going to determine a lot of the benefit of this first one. And they are suggesting the 95/5 rule. So they're saying to get 95% of your foods from plant-based foods and 5% from animal-based. I don't think that's a bad thing. Lots of fruits and vegetables. Well-grown fruits and vegetables, like in small communities where they actually care about soil quality and what's going into the food, because in a small community, you're only as good as what you're feeding everybody. In a big city, they stop caring because nobody's connected to anybody. Anyway, vitamin C. The first 2 things they list on here in terms of plant-based foods, fruits and vegetables. Where do we get vitamin C from? Fruits and vegetables. So therefore, they are helping with their vitamin C. Is that enough vitamin C? It depends on how much iron's coming in, honestly. The more iron you have coming in your diet, that drastically raises your need for vitamin C. And remember, in my articles, on my Facebook notes, if you don't know how to find Facebook notes, Google what are Facebook notes, and you can find it. In my Facebook notes, the key thing that we need about vitamin C is ascorbate, or ascorbic acid. The food-based vitamin C complex is a nice idea, but when you just really need vitamin C, you need those things. That's what they restrict from guinea pigs to give them vitamin C deficiency. They don't restrict food-based vitamin C. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. Fruits and vegetables, very, very important. The other things that they talk about in here are, they talk about grains. They actually say greens as a separate thing. Greens I would put into vegetables. And beans. I was looking at another study before about groups of longest lived people in the world, and they said, this was a funny thing, they said the only thing we could find in common among all these groups was that they ate lentils. So the whole paleo crowd out there, and this new guy, I forget who he is, somebody talked to me about him the other day, who's like anti-lectin everything. Just avoid lectins in all your foods, and not only will you have nothing left to eat, but then somehow you'll have magical, perfect health. No, lectins are in everything. Lectins have been around forever. We've always been eating them. Here's the problem. People's systems and their nutrition overall is getting so bad that their systems are getting so weak that things that didn't used to bother them are bothering them, okay? Think about like when you see an older person, fairly old, and you start seeing their skin get really thin, and it can tear really easily, and it bruises at the slightest touch. That's not supposed to be happening. That's a weakness in the system. So then touches or scrapes or slight bumps cause damage. That's not supposed to be the way it is. And then you tell these people, well, just don't do anything. Then you won't bump into anything, you won't touch anything, and you won't tear your skin and you won't bruise it. That's not life. That's not a life to live. You don't want to do that when really, honestly, those people who have massive bruising probably have deficiencies in vitamin C. Funny thing that'll keep coming up. Anyway, fruits and vegetables, vitamin C. Greens also fit into vitamin C. Beans, they're suggesting a cup of beans a day. Well, it just so happens that if you get a cup of beans a day, legumes, that's peanuts too, any type of beans, generally you're going to get your molybdenum need for the day. And molybdenum is a mineral that's very important for your liver. It helps process alcohol. It helps the liver to process alcohol. Molybdenum helps the liver to process sulfites that are added to wine and are in certain foods. Molybdenum helps your body to process caffeine. And molybdenum is necessary for your liver to metabolize like candida or yeast toxins. And molybdenum is very important in copper and iron metabolism in the body. So beans just happen to give you that. And like that other study I said about lentils, that's the only thing they could find in common in these long-lived people was lentils. So beans are not anywhere near the demon that the paleo crowd has made them out to be. Again, this is my oolong tea. We'll talk about that when we get to things that the Blue Zones people drink. They talk in here about olive oil, using olive oil to saute your vegetables. Monounsaturated fats, olive oil and avocado oil. Those are good things. Plant fats are not bad. Don't let the people out there who love to demonize any polyunsaturated fats push you away from avocado oil or olive oil. So now we're on the next one. They call it retreat from meat. One of the biggest things we do wrong in this country that is like a disease we are spreading across the world is that civilized people eat more meat. And that's a status symbol. And so if you eat a lot of meat, you're doing pretty good. So here in America, we're going to eat as much meat as we can, and we have high protein diets and low carb diets. High protein diet gives you lots of iron. Low carb diet also will give you less fruits and vegetables, less vitamin C. Do you see the problem here? Iron overload always goes along with vitamin C deficiency. Oh, let's eat all tons of meat and no fruits and vegetables. And then you wonder why. I found a study. I need to find it again. I lost the link. It showed that people who had been on a low carb diet for like 20 years had the highest rates of diabetes in the study. Okay, why would that be? Well, I'm going to tell you, iron overload is the main cause of diabetes because of how it affects the liver. And that's why. So those of you who are low carbing and like think fruits are bad. Okay, so if you could eat fruits as a kid, and then you do silly things in your health in your life where you get to be an adult and you can't eat fruit anymore, it doesn't mean that fruit is bad for you. It means that you messed up somewhere or something happened that messed you up. If you could do something as a kid and you can't do it as an adult, something happened somewhere. Something broke. And we can fix that. What will a low-carb diet do? It'll load you up on iron, no vitamin C, very little magnesium, very little potassium, all these things that regulate your blood sugar. And then you wonder why your blood sugar system is broken and why now you can't tolerate any carbs. It's right there. It's in the nutrition. There is a reason for everything. Everything has a reason. And when we know the physiology and we know the biochemistry, it's all right here in the research. So anyway, retreat from meat. They're suggesting, the Blue Zones people on average, listen to this, eat 4 to 6 ounces of meat protein a week. 4 to 6 ounces of meat protein a week. Now that does not include eggs, and that does not include dairy. Eggs are not meat in this thing, and dairy is not meat. So there was even an article that I posted a while back in my Facebook notes about a journal called Meat Science, right? Journal called Meat Science. They're pretty pro-meat. You know, that makes sense. They're pro-meat. It's meat science. There was an article talking about iron overload and how Westerners are basically eating more meat than they should, and it's causing health problems. And what they suggested in this article was limiting your red meat to a pound or less a week. For my metric folks, that's about a half a kilo, 500 grams. Red meat less than a pound a week. And then I also basically added to that, I said just meat once a day at most. If you think of it as one meal a day. You can find things for your other meals. For those of you who are like meat crazy and you're like, what am I going to eat? Okay. Humans have not been eating meat 2 or 3 times a day for very long. We just haven't. I tell people about this, like when you think of, if you were out there hunting, you had to hunt your own meat. You didn't have it served up nice in little styrofoam containers wrapped in plastic. Hunting animals with knives and spears, and maybe a bow and arrow, it's dangerous. Like, could you imagine how dangerous a cow would be if you wanted to try to go and kill a cow? Or a bull? Or even a deer? Like, do you know how, let's say you get a spear into a deer, or a bow and arrow, it doesn't mean it's dead. You gotta go and get that out of it, and then gut it and all that stuff. It might spring to life while you're doing that, kick you in the face. You don't have hospitals around, you're dead. Okay? So humans were probably eating mostly like little game, little like rabbit and you know, gophers and stuff that we could get that was small, that would not ruin our life if we got too close to it after we had gotten it and then it did something to us. Like injuries before hospitals, you're probably going to die or be disabled for the rest of your life. So you really want to avoid those. Anyway, so there's probably not a lot of meat around. Now, humans also will absorb every little bit of heme iron. Heme iron means meat iron. We will always absorb as much heme iron as possible every time we are exposed to it. And we do have, so the opposite of that, plant iron. We do have mechanisms in our body, hepcidin system is the big one, where we can say no thank you to iron from plants. So we can say, no thank you, I've had enough. I'm going to push away from the table. I don't want any more iron today. I'm good. Heme iron, we don't say that. We're just going to put as much of it as we can in our system every time we are exposed. There's also something called the meat factor, which means that every time you eat meat, whatever you eat with it, it increases the absorption of iron from everything else. You want to know what that meat factor probably is? For those of you who are familiar with methionine and glycine, and how glycine is generally a good thing to have, and too much methionine causes lots of problems, it's the methionine in meat that is probably the meat factor that causes us to absorb more iron from everything else. So anyway, so more meat, more iron, more problems, right? It's just too much meat. You can overdo meat. Most of us are overdoing meat. Then to undo the damage, that's the other thing about iron that I didn't say, about heme iron. You have to think about this. Humans have trouble resisting added fats, right? We really like adding fats to things. It makes better mouthfeel. It tastes good. We also have really trouble with adding too much sugar to things because it tastes good. It makes things taste better. Lots of fat, lots of sugar, lots of salt, lots of starch. This is the fast food recipe for success, right? They just feed you these things because they all taste super good together. And the human body, we are not wired to have a control system on that. We just tend to eat as much of it as possible. And we have to artificially say, no thanks, I don't want that, because we're programmed to eat as much of that as possible every time it's exposed. Because humans in the past, 100 years ago, most of the time they were kind of close to starvation. I mean, there's still groups out there who are on starvation, the brink of it every day. But food didn't used to be as easy to get as it is today. So you have to think about this. Things that we have trouble controlling, or that we tend to eat too much of whenever we're exposed to it, probably weren't big things in our past. We weren't exposed to them a lot. Why do we eat honey as much as we could whenever we came across it? Because we didn't know when we were going to find that again. Heme iron. So here's the logic. If our bodies are programmed to absorb as much heme iron as possible from meat every time we eat it, the logic is, and it can cause problems if you absorb too much of it over time, like iron overload. The logic is that we were not eating that much meat in our past. And we have greatly increased it. I have a study from the other day. I posted the China study, not the China study, because he's got it wrong. He just says it's meat, and he doesn't understand that it's iron. Anyway, where they showed that Chinese women who had immigrated to the U.S. had higher rates of breast cancer over generations as they had moved to the U.S., and what they were seeing was also breast cancer was going up in China. What they connected it to was that when they moved to the U.S., they start eating like Americans do, and they start eating too much iron in meat, because they just eat a lot more meat here than they used to in their traditional, Chinese diet. But then also China is increasing the meat in their diet because they want to be more like Western thing. And so they're seeing breast cancer go up everywhere. I've read, I have not seen the reference on this, but like as an example, breast cancer tissue is said to have 3 times as much iron in it than normal. Then you start going, well, there's probably a connection. Go on PubMed, type in iron breast cancer. You'll find all sorts of stuff. So, you don't want to overdo meat. Meat is the thing that you can overdo. Am I saying no meat? I am absolutely not saying no meat. That's not what I'm saying. I eat it about once a day. People who want to be super athletes and they feel like they have to get tons of protein, do all that stuff, that's fine. Nobody ever said being an athlete and working out, 2, 3, 5 hours a day was good for you. Like, humans need movement. We do not need like crazy hard exercise that requires 200 grams of protein a day. Nobody ever said that was necessary. Nobody's ever associated warriors, like in the past, warriors were like our athletes of today. Nobody ever associated being a warrior with long life. It just doesn't go together. The things you have to do to be big and strong are not necessarily the things you have to do to live a long life. And if you look at the Blue Zones people, they're generally smaller in stature and kind of peaceful people. They're lovers, not fighters. They're not the type who are warrior types. And so they do things that are associated with more like longevity than warrior stuff. So you want to be a warrior? That's fine. You're probably going to die earlier. We all make our choices. So that was the retreat from meat one. I could probably eat less meat, but I kind of like it, and I think once a day is okay, as long as I get enough vitamin C. So then we go to they have this one here, take or leave fish. I have 2 of these things. One of them from the same group, Blue Zones, that one of them says fish is fine, and one of them says take or leave fish. They're both, is fish okay? Well, here's what I can tell you based on hair testing. I can, with a pretty good degree of accuracy, I can tell you about how often you eat fish in a week based on your mercury level on a hair test. That scares me. There's mercury in all. If you eat fish on a hair test, I can tell. How much fish you eat, like when people eat sushi, oh man, that's where I guess wrong, because sushi is full of mercury. Oh my gosh. And that's where I'll overestimate how often they eat it. They might be like, I eat sushi like twice a month, and I'm thinking they're eating it like every day. Eating fish every day, because the sushi is just so much higher. So, do I eat fish or shellfish? No. I actually got symptoms from the mercury when I used to eat it. When I'd have like sushi at night, I'd go to bed, I'd have palpitations, and I'd be awake until about midnight. And so we stopped eating fish, and we stopped having, when we go to visit grandma, stopped having grandma make fish, and all that problem went away. So, no, I don't eat fish and shellfish. I don't trust it. The ocean is just dirty. I'm sorry, it is. I wish it wasn't. I like fish, but I don't eat it. So one says they're saying fish up to 3 times weekly, and then on one other page they're saying don't eat it because it's probably full of mercury and you probably do better to avoid it. I avoid it. And like I said, I can tell how much mercury you're getting on a hair test. Hair test shows the mercury that is in fish or shellfish, the organic mercury, the methyl mercury, the ethyl mercury. Hair testing does not show amalgam filling mercury or other mercury you've been exposed to because that's inorganic mercury or metallic mercury. It just doesn't show it. It's the chemistry of it. It's the way the hair test works. Like we see uranium on a hair test, uranium-238, but it doesn't show us, I want to get these numbers right, 234 and 235, or is it 235 and 236? Those are like the nuclear reactor ones. So the hair test doesn't show us those because they're actually a different atomic configuration. So let me go to the next one. Diminish dairy. Well, for those of you who have read Dr. Eric Lewis's book, one of the things that people can do to reduce iron absorption from the diet is you can eat things that are high in calcium or take calcium supplements when you have high iron things. Well, if you've been following me at all, too much calcium is a problem secondary only to too much iron. So not a big fan of, like I have a study that shows that elderly folks, when they supplemented calcium or they took vitamin D, they had more calcium lesions in their brain. Not something I want. Calcium is not as important as you've been led to believe. If you want to watch some of my other videos and read some of my Facebook notes, the human body is amazingly efficient at keeping calcium, recycling calcium, reusing calcium. It's everything else you need to maintain that recycling and reusing. Magnesium, boron, vitamin K, potassium. You need all these things. Vitamin C. Vitamin C deficiency by itself will cause osteoporosis. Go on PubMed, type in vitamin C osteoporosis. Have fun with that one. Then you'll be like, why did nobody ever tell my grandma to get on vitamin C for her osteoporosis? I don't know. It's in the research. Go look it up yourself. So, dairy in the U.S. generally, I mean, if you're getting... First of all, humans aren't designed for dairy. I'm not a crazy anti-dairy, like vegan person, but when you think about it, really when you're eating dairy, you're suckling up to a cow. It's not natural. We're not supposed to do it. We're the only creature that steals milk from other animals. It's not normal. You can justify it however you want. It's just not normal. Is it good? Yeah, sure, it tastes good. Butter's great. You know, I had a yogurt the other day. Just people are just like living on the stuff. No, diminish dairy. Yeah, so I generally tell people reduce your dairy, minimize your dairy, or eliminate your dairy. Most American dairy is just garbage. It's just, that's what we've done with it. We got all these cows, and and organic dairy from these giant organic farms it's got less chemicals in it, less toxic stuff theoretically. Yes, probably. But is it still kind of the same? Is it still pasteurized or ultra pasteurized and homogenized and has vitamin A and D added? Probably. So generally I just say don't rely on dairy in your diet. They talk here on having some, feta cheese or if you're going to have something, sheep cheese or goat cheese. See, they even say sheep cheese or goat cheese because that's what these blue zones people are eating if they're eating dairy. They're eating sheep dairy or goat dairy because cow dairy, it's just what we do, but it's probably not good for you. So anyway, they also mentioned reducing eggs. Eggs are amazing at helping reduce bad iron. And eggs, there was a study where they showed where people increased their eggs and their cholesterol went down. Well, I'm going to tell you high cholesterol is an iron overload and a vitamin C deficiency problem. So increasing their eggs, reducing their iron overload, reduce their cholesterol. Let's go into this. This is... the whole thing about what you read scientists and researchers and and the media, and they keep trying to associate red meat with high cholesterol and saturated fat with high cholesterol. It's not saturated fat. It never was. High cholesterol is an iron overload problem. That's in red meat, right? And a vitamin C deficiency problem. And you can go and type in vitamin C cholesterol at PubMed, and you can start to see the studies where vitamin C brings down cholesterol. These two are always intertwined. Always. So, they keep trying to pin it on saturated fat because they say, oh, red meat is high in saturated fat, and that must be the ticket. No, it's iron. Eggs help reduce iron, which is why they get these confounding studies that confuse the researchers so much, because they say, well, so eating lots of eggs, which have tons of cholesterol, should raise your cholesterol. Well, 80% of your cholesterol-ish is made by your liver. So if your liver's not happy, your cholesterol's not going to be happy. Iron overload goes up. Iron overload affects your liver first. So we see the cholesterol go up. We see the triglycerides go up. You don't know anybody who has that, right? Not in America. So eggs are great. People think when I say generally try to reduce your meat intake, they think I'm saying eat less protein. I didn't say that. That's not true. That'd be like saying, when people say I'm avoiding carbs, and you say, well, what are you avoiding? They say, I'm avoiding white flour and white sugar. They have no idea what a carb is, because there's carbs in fruits and there's carbs in vegetables, and then they go, oh, well, I'm just trying to simplify it and say I'm just avoiding carbs. No, they're avoiding highly processed carbs. So I'm not saying to avoid protein. I tell people, have 3 or more eggs a day if you tolerate them. I don't tolerate them very well. I get really, my digestion doesn't like them. So I don't eat them. But for people who tolerate them and do good on them, some dairy, blue cheese, I like. Gorgonzola cheese, I like. Fermented or cultured cheese is not a bad one. But anyway, so with dairy, cultured cheeses are probably the best. I do use butter at my house, good old Kerrygold and stuff like that. But you're not relying on dairy in your diet. So I agree with that one too. And I don't like the idea of using calcium to try to diminish the iron absorption, because if you're diminishing your iron absorption, that's probably because you're absorbing more calcium, which is probably not the best idea. But it's probably better to have more calcium than more iron if I had to choose. So then we go daily dose of beans. I kind of already talked about that one. Cup of beans a day. Do I do this every day? No, I try. I try to have beans when I can. If you're not tolerating beans very well, there's things you can try. If you don't get along with them, if this is something I do that I don't understand why more people don't do. If you don't get along with beans, and you never get along with beans, and nothing you try to get along with beans helps, then don't eat beans. Or find a different bean. Actually, one tip I'll give you that I give my clients is try to pick the best beans for you are probably the beans that are, if you look up the blood type diet, now listen carefully. I'm not saying I'm endorsing the whole blood type diet, because there's a lot of pseudoscientific stuff in there that I don't like. But in terms of the lectins in beans and how they respond to your blood, I think there's some legitimacy to the blood type diet in terms of the beans you should eat. And I've had good results with clients with this. So if you look online, you find the blood type diet list. I think ER4YT, the Eat Right for Your Type, you'll find these lists. The neutral beans for your type and the beneficial beans for your type are probably going to be the ones that you tolerate the best. If you start noticing that there are certain beans that are in the avoid list and you're like, I never felt good on those garbanzo beans. Oh my gosh. Those are on my avoid list. I never felt good with those. So imagine this. I don't eat them. I find that hummus is not worth it for me. I like it, but it doesn't make me feel good, so I don't eat it. So the lectins thing, there's some truth to it, and there's also a lot of stuff put into it. So then we go to slashing sugar. Added sugar is not good for anybody. I have research that shows that added sugars decrease hepcidin, which is your master iron regulatory hormone, which means it will increase iron overload. Okay? This is probably why added sugar is associated with diabetes, and eating fruit is not. Because remember, fruit's going to bring in the sugar, it's also going to bring in vitamin C. So, adding sugar, not a great idea. It's not a great idea for anything. It's just adding sugar. You don't want to add sugar to things. If there's sugar in something, kind of like fat, I tell people if there's fat naturally in something, eat it, don't worry about it. If there's sugar naturally in something, eat it, don't worry about it. You start pouring oil on things and sprinkling sugar on everywhere, and that's not good. Nobody in nutrition would ever say that that's good. So, but we now know in the research that added sugars decrease hepcidin, which increases iron overload. I posted research the other day about how alcohol increases iron overload. These things all have a reason why they're associated with liver disease, and diabetes is basically a liver disease. So, the next one, snacking on nuts. Nuts are not, the PUFA crazy people, the PEAT people who are like trying to, you can't avoid PUFAs. Don't give it a rest. You can't avoid them. I mean, you could, if you want to eat butter all day, I guess you could, maybe. Butter and nothing else. Because every food you eat that has fat in it has a mixture of some amount of saturated fats, some amount of polyunsaturated fats, and some amount of monounsaturated fats. Nothing has, not nothing. Sorry, I shouldn't use an absolute. There are very, 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 very few fats that are only one type of fat. So, and almost all of them have some amount of PUFA in them. So forget the PUFA. You want to know, actually, you know what? You know why PUFAs are a problem? I have this study that shows that, what's the problem with PUFAs? What does everybody worry about with PUFAs? That they're going to oxidize and put oxidized fats in your system. Okay. What's the most potent oxidation thing in your body? It's iron. And I have the research that shows that when there's iron overload, it oxidizes the PUFAs more and causes a problem. So I can connect everything. Everything, all these theories that people came up with as to why people are getting sick, I can almost bring every single one of them back to the iron overload and the vitamin C deficiency. It bothers me that nobody figured this out before. It really bothers me. I shouldn't be the one doing this. But anyway, don't worry about nuts. They talk about a quarter cup of nuts a day. Don't buy them with sugar on them if you don't need to. You know, I have 5 Brazil nuts a day most days. 5 Brazil nuts a day is enough to get you the selenium you need. I have studies showing that a selenium deficiency will cause an iron overload. 5 Brazil nuts a day, don't have a problem with that. So, they talk about bread here. Limiting your bread to 2 slices daily, and it has to be whole grain breads or authentic sourdough bread made from live cultures, and grains are a mixed bag. You may do okay with them, you may not. Generally, I don't do well with grains, and they're kind of a late addition to the human nutrition, so can they be okay? Sure. If you're eating a ton of grains, you're pushing out fruits and vegetables, though. That leads to a vitamin C deficiency. You want to know how people in third world countries get true iron deficiency? Let's talk about the recipe for this. They don't eat meat, so they don't get heme iron. They eat tons of grains. That might be all they eat. So they get lots of phytic acid. You can actually use phytic acid to chelate iron. It's called IP6, inositol hexaphosphate. It will absorb other things, it absorbs other minerals, but you can use phytic acid from grains to chelate iron out of the system. Do I use it? No, I haven't found a need to use it. And I don't want to take out other minerals at the same time, because it does take out other minerals. So anyway, they're eating grains, tons of phytic acid, so they are leaching iron out of their system. They're not getting iron. They're leaching it out of their system. And in these poor third world countries, they're not eating fruits and vegetables very much. So there's almost no vitamin C to put the iron where it needs to go. That is the recipe for true iron deficiency. Does it happen? Absolutely. Could somebody who has iron overload lose too much blood and then become anemic and actually need some iron? Sure, it could happen. This is why I don't give absolutes. This is why I work with clients and I say, what are you doing? Where are we at? What do we need to do? Because no situation is the same. But that's how you create a true iron deficiency. Tons of grains, no meat, no fruits and vegetables. And the more whole grains you eat, and the other things like that, especially, how do we want to put this? Just grains in general. The more grains you eat, the more you're going to push out fruits and vegetables, because they fill you up a lot, and they bring a lot of calories in, so then you don't feel like eating fruits and vegetables, so then you don't. And then you don't get your vitamin C, the pathetic amounts of vitamin C that are even available in American produce. Okay. The last one, drink mostly water. So I'm going to tell you something that the blue zones have left out that they used to talk about, which is critical to iron metabolism. They talk about drink mostly water. Yeah, drinking mostly water is not a bad thing. But what they actually used to specifically talk about in their articles, you could probably find it if you went searching enough. I'm not going to do that because I already know what it is. They would say they tend to drink things like coffee, which is a great iron reducer. It's got polyphenols in it, which are OPCs. Coffee is great. The studies, when you hear studies where they're like, oh, if you drink 6 cups of coffee a day, it's associated with a 30% reduced risk of diabetes. Funny connection there. I think I mentioned diabetes and iron overload earlier, and coffee reduces iron overload. Then, if you drink 12 cups of coffee a day, it will reduce your risk of Alzheimer's by 60%. Alzheimer's is probably iron deposits in the brain. So these things, when you start seeing coffee associated with reducing risks of certain diseases, it's because coffee reduces iron overload. Simplest. That's it. When people overdo coffee, you want to know what it causes? Taking too much of a stimulant works too hard on your adrenals, and then you can get vitamin C deficiency because your adrenals are the most concentrated part of vitamin C in your body. So that's where too much caffeine will cause problems. Most of these people who are on adrenal fatigue, if it's not just self-starvation that's causing their adrenal fatigue, it's probably vitamin C deficiency in their adrenal, which then goes and causes iron overload. So, next thing, they used to talk about this. They drink tea, the Camellia sinensis plant. So I'm not talking about herbal teas. I'm talking about tea. Now, what that can be black tea, that could be oolong tea, that could be Earl Grey, that could be green tea, that could be white tea. There's other ones I'm sure I haven't mentioned that are from the Camellia sinensis plant. Depending upon how it's processed, there's catechins in it and theaflavins. Or I don't know if they say theaflavins, but it's THEA. It's theaflavins. Is how I'm going to say it today. So, these are known iron chelators. They help get bad iron out of the body, and they're also bringing in antioxidants to the body. So that's how those help iron, and that's why they used to talk about those. And then the last one was red wine. Now, red wine is a mixed bag for me. And so I'm not saying for everybody to go out and justify drinking a bunch of red wine. First of all, if you're going to drink red wine, it needs to be organic. They spray grapes like crazy. So don't just go drink a big old pesticide-laden bottle of red wine and then wonder why you don't feel good that night or the next day. Get organic wine. I mean, Trader Joe's has several of them. You're not going to have as much of a selection. Live with it. I don't know what to say. And then make sure most organic wine is going to be sulfite free. Remember how I talked about molybdenum and sulfites? So if you drink regular wine and you get things like you feel really hot or my ears turn red, I get really irritable, I sleep like garbage, I feel hot at night. These are all things that, especially when I used to have a molybdenum deficiency, that was a problem. But those are signs of a molybdenum deficiency, and you're not tolerating the sulfites. Organic wine has less sulfites, but all wine has sulfites in it. You can't get away from them. There's naturally occurring sulfites in the wine. Here in America, we've decided that we need to protect everybody, so we're going to add more sulfites, especially to imported wines, or they have to add them before they make them so they can actually import them. So, anyway, but resveratrol and the OPCs that are in grapes can help reduce iron overload. Alcohol, on the other hand, which is obviously also in wine, will increase iron overload. So that's why wine is like a mixed bag. I generally, if you have health problems and you're drinking alcohol on a regular basis, get the alcohol out. You'll feel better. Go and you can do a Google search of like before and after alcohol. You'll find pictures of like when they were drinking alcohol and after they stopped drinking. And the changes in their faces are amazing. If you got a puffy face and you drink, that's from your alcohol. If you got a red face and you drink, that's from the alcohol. That's an iron overload thing going on. Get rid of it. It's easy. There's not that much that alcohol brings to anybody's life. Anyway, it also depletes magnesium. So those are the things on the Blue Zone stuff. Let me go to the other page that I looked at. I talked about unsweetened teas and coffee. I'll be honest, I add a tablespoon of coconut sugar to my coffee in the morning. But that's all the added sugars I try to have in a day on a regular basis. So I add a little bit. I don't enjoy the coffee so much without it. So yeah, I break these rules too. But it's the idea of like, am I eating added sugars all day long, or do I just have 3 teaspoons, that's 1 tablespoon, 3 teaspoons of added sugar in the morning, and then I really don't add sugar. I don't add sugar to this. But yeah, there's places. Think of it as it's always it's the assembly, the accumulation of everything you do together. So if you have somebody who's eating lots of, let's say, white flour that has added iron, so they're eating lots of processed flour products, and they're eating lots of added sugar products, and they're drinking alcohol, and they're not eating fruits and vegetables, and they're eating meat all the time, and they're not ever sweating, so they're not exercising or they're not sweating. Sweating can help get rid of a little iron. Not that much. It's not going to save you. Don't think that your exercise is going to save you from eating meat 3 times a day. Don't fool yourself. But will sweating help? Yes. What else would there be that would be a bad thing? And I got Aubrey Ann asked a question about teff flour and iron. Well, here's the problem with iron in foods, in plant foods. So let's talk about genetic iron overload. Genetic iron overload, which is theorized to have started in the Ireland area, Ireland, Scotland. I actually wonder if it was a response to the periods of starvation and famine there, where they only had things like potatoes. And if you didn't absorb your iron from those plant foods, from those potatoes, you were going to die. And so genetically it selected the people who could absorb the most iron from food because they lived. And the people who couldn't get as much iron died. That's genetic selection at work, and that may be why the gene kind of started in those areas, because it helped those people survive. Anyway, genetic iron overload, so everyone absorbs as much heme iron from meat as possible every time you eat it. It's just the way it is. It doesn't mean you absorb every bit of iron. It means that whatever you're able to absorb, which I think they said was about 13% of the iron that you eat from meat, you're going to absorb as much as possible every time. The body never slows down. It'd be like if you were seeing somebody at one of those hot dog eating contests, and they're just shoving it in. That's what your body's doing with the heme iron. Plant iron, we have mechanisms to say no thank you. In genetic iron overload, hemochromatosis, the body has more of a problem saying no to plant iron, and so it will absorb more plant iron. It doesn't turn off the yes please as well. So that's where, so those people, if they eat meat iron, heme iron, they get in all that heme iron, and they have trouble shutting off the plant iron. That is why genetic iron overload happens, and that will happen. Vitamin C will help that a lot, but with genetic iron overload, those people have to watch their sources of iron coming in much more. Normal people without the genetics can get iron overload. I've seen it all the time. And then people with the genetics, which is where I first started, where I thought was a big deal, the genetics just make it so those people are going to have to work that much harder to prevent the problems. You know, a normal person who does some of these things that I'm talking about, like the blue zones type of stuff, they're not going to have a problem with iron. But the people with the genetic issues, they may have to work even harder. One of the things that I just wanted to say that these blue zones people are not doing is taking vitamin D supplements. They're getting outside. When I was reading about the blue zones years ago, they were talking about, sheep herding and gardening, and they were doing things outdoors, and they were spending lots of time with friends, and they're trying to relate other things to longevity. And of course, getting exercise and spending time with friends is important. These are all important things. I like to do a lot of car analogies. If you don't ever tune up your car, you don't ever put air in your tires, you don't ever put oil in your tank, you don't ever put gas in you put the wrong gas in your tank, or you put the wrong oil in, or you do things wrong with what you put into the car, like air in the tires, oil, gas, your car is going to break. That is nutrition. Nutrition is the blue zones. The other stuff, time with friends and getting out and exercising, it doesn't matter how much time you spend with friends and how much you exercise if your nutrition is garbage and you're driving yourself into iron overload and vitamin C deficiency. It doesn't matter the other things. Like, it doesn't matter how you drive your car. If you're like, well, I always accelerate slowly and I try to brake early and I leave plenty of space between me and the other car, but the whole time you're driving on problems in the engine. Does that make sense? So I always talk about pyramids. What you put in your car is the base of the pyramid. How you drive it is like up here on the top. So this is why there's lots of diet stuff in the Blue Zone stuff, because all these people, they all have different patterns and, you know, how they spend time with friends and what they do for movement and exercise and all this. But the diet stuff, what they found was patterns. Patterns are what I do. They found patterns in how they ate. And these are the biggest things that united them and aligned them in terms of what they were doing. Let me see if I can't get to, I think I got to the TEF question. I mean, I'm good with the TEF question. Plant iron, the only plant iron things I tend to worry about is, I'm trying to find my Facebook Live on my computer, see if I can look at the questions. So, Rachel mentioned headaches or migraines every time she drinks wine. That's either the alcohol or the sulfites. Can't really get away with that. Teff flour. I'm not worried about plant iron unless it's concentrated plant iron. I myself and another person who may be watching right now, we both tried this herb called Foti, F-O-T-I, which in Chinese medicine was an herb associated with all sorts of good things. I didn't feel good on it, and neither did this other guy. And after as I was learning about all this stuff, this was months and months ago, I started thinking maybe there's a lot of iron in that. Because it's funny, a lot of the herbs that were in Chinese medicine, a lot of the herbs I learned, basically, they were high in iron. And the Chinese diet, high in rice, we're talking old school, high in rice, not a lot of meat, fruits, it had some fruits and some vegetables and stuff like that, but it was definitely a lot of grains and not a lot of meat. What you think of American Chinese food is not the traditional Chinese diet from like 200 years ago, okay? So anyway, I was thinking there was probably a lot of iron deficiency back then. And then if they were using herbs that were high in plant iron, that probably helped them feel better. That makes sense, but then we have people in America thinking, well, that says that's good for this, and I'm going to take that, and then they start feeling bad like I did and my other client did. And then we look it up and we found out it's high in iron, and so then we avoid it. So, molasses is super high in iron. That molasses is probably what started me on the iron overload thing, because every time I'd take molasses, the first time I did it, I took a tablespoon a day in my coffee, and I slowly started getting more tired, more cold hands and cold feet. I stopped it. That all seemed to resolve. The next time I did it, I did a teaspoon a day. I thought I would bring it back. This is before I knew about the iron overload thing. Did a teaspoon in my coffee. I started noticing the fatigue and the cold hands, cold feet. Took it out again. The fatigue got better, but the cold hands and cold feet, not as much as it did the first time. Why is that? Iron overload is an accumulative disease. It's accumulating in your tissues. This is why generally the older you are, the higher your risk of diabetes, the higher your risk of heart disease, because the iron is just accumulating in your system. And you're getting more in than you're getting out. It's as simple as that. We start working on getting the iron out, health problems just start going away. There is some detox. There is iron detox that goes on. It takes a long time. I'll put it this way. Iron overload takes the longest to fix. Calcium overload is next. I tell people when they start with a high calcium on a hair test, it's going to be at least a year to get that calcium down. Iron overload may take longer. I believe it does. Copper toxicity is pretty much the easiest to fix. That's pretty straightforward. That just comes, generally we just have that come down. I've had some problematic people, especially in Australia. Australia's got tons of copper. I've had issues getting that down, but I'm thinking that as I get the vitamin C in those protocols from those folks in Australia, that's going to bring that copper down too. Calcium can accumulate in the liver. Copper can accumulate in the liver. Iron definitely accumulates in the liver. This is where disease starts. So, yeah, Lucas, you were talking about the Ray Peat approach. I didn't mention that by name, but that's definitely the Pete folks. Ray Pete, his concepts are great. Like his overarching concepts, like feed the metabolic rate. You want the metabolic rate to be good. Salt is good for you, you know. You want the right amount of progesterone. Yes. I heavily disagree with his methods. Like for anybody to think that like adding a ton of white sugar to things is going to fix your health, I'm sorry. Show me one study that showed that. I don't know of any studies where they show white sugar is good for you. Try to find one. Show me one. Tell me all about how white sugar is the key to your health and your metabolism. Because what I see is when people are over 30, especially over 40, and they start doing Ray Pete, they just get hellaciously fat. And then they wonder how they're going to get all this off because they're scared to not eat enough. And they know that the Ray Pete didn't work. Oh, what's the other thing with the Ray Pete diet? Let's drink tons of orange juice and drink tons of milk. And let's even add sugar to our orange juice and milk because that'll help. And they do kind of avoid, they try to not eat too much meat, which is good. But it's just, white sugar, there is no health in white sugar. You're not going to find it there, sorry. Okay, so, yeah, John, the Hoshu Wu, I think, yeah, I might pronounce it wrong. I remember a Foti or a Hoshu Wu. Yeah, my wife did not, my wife has genetic iron overload. She does a carrier, a heterozygous for one of the iron overload genes. She felt bad on it. It messed up her sleep. One of the first symptoms of iron overload is insomnia. And I started taking it after she was done with it. I didn't feel good on it. My other client, I talked to him about it. I'm like, so are you still on that? I found out that was high in iron. He's like, no, I stopped that a long time ago. I did not feel good on that. High in iron. So, Rachel, low iron via standard blood tests. Is it still possible to have iron overload? Oh, absolutely. The iron tests I always want to see. So a CBC there's actually markers on a CBC that will show you iron overload, but you got to know what to look for. And I've high. Well, actually, that's on a CMP. A blood urea nitrogen, a high blood urea nitrogen on a CMP will show iron overload. But on the CBC, we can see iron overload through the MCV. We can see it through, I'm trying to think of the other ones. I don't think there's other ones that you can really see it. But so the CBC is better at showing iron deficiency. But that just means it's iron deficiency in the red blood cells. Then we need to do a GGT, gamma glutamyl transferase. That shows us how much iron is oxidizing in the liver. It's an indirect marker of iron overload in the liver. Ferritin is a more direct marker of how much iron is being stored in the liver, so we got to get that. Then we need a serum iron, which is showing how much iron is floating around in the blood in total. And then we want a total iron binding capacity, because the serum iron divided by the total iron binding capacity gives us the iron saturation percent, and that can be another marker of iron overload. So 5 tests: CBC, GGT, ferritin, serum iron, and total iron binding capacity. Serum iron and total iron binding capacity are usually on the what's called the iron panel. They also throw in a UIBC. That's fine. It's not as helpful, but yeah, the ferritin's usually separate. The GGT is definitely separate, and then we have the good old CBC. So, John, I saw the thing about the gray hair with the Foti and the Hoshu Wu. So iron deficiency will cause gray hair. Funny thing is I've been treating especially women who were either thinning their hair or they had gray hair, and I've started getting them on enough. They had taken iron in the past. Always had low iron on blood tests, CBC. And they take iron, and it'll help a little bit, and then over time the problem falls apart. That's because when you take iron, when it's a vitamin C deficiency and you take iron, you're like ramming the iron into the blood cells. So you get some more iron in there for a little while, and you feel better for a little while. Then the vitamin C deficiency, the iron overload, gets worse. and then you have problems, and then the hair starts falling out again because the body's trying to get the iron out of the red blood cells, and it's a vitamin C deficiency. And I've been having people telling me that their hair is thickening, and I'm not giving them iron, which is what they used to have to do, which it would work, and then it would turn bad. Same thing with vitamin D supplements. Vitamin D supplements will suppress your immune system. So if you have autoimmune conditions going on, whether you know them or not, you might feel better for a month because it suppresses your body attacking itself. So you feel better. It's a relief. And then the problem comes back because the immune system suppression stops. Your calcium goes up. You start feeling like crap. So we always have to watch things. There's the short-term effect, and then there's the long-term effect. Very, very important. But yeah. Rachel, I start looking for high MCV at about 92. So low MCV is iron deficiency, little red blood cells. High MCV can be iron overload, things that can cause high MCV, high-ish MCV. Iron overload. Copper deficiency, this is what we use the hair test for on copper. B12 deficiency. B12 deficiency, B12 absorption. B12 is the hardest nutrient to absorb from your diet because it requires a certain amount of stomach acid to then activate intrinsic factor to absorb, to bind to the B12 and carry it across. Okay? B12 is the hardest nutrient to absorb. So, got to fix the stomach acid to fix the B12 absorption. If you have a B12 deficiency and you eat enough meat to get your B12, you probably have a vitamin C deficiency because vitamin C is necessary to make stomach acid. Nobody talks about vitamin C and stomach acid. So, there's that connection. High MCV could also be low folate. I have research from 1975 that shows that vitamin C is critical in folate metabolism. So there we have the connection to the high MCV. Could just be a vitamin C deficiency, which could affect folate, it could affect B12, which would affect stomach acid. Vitamin C is necessary to make stomach acid overall. Iron overload always goes along with the vitamin C deficiency. Are you catching a trend here? There's kind of a pattern here. And I can back up all this stuff with research. You should see the emails I send to myself every day. It's like at least 10 links usually of iron overload link to this, iron overload link to this, I just go down. So, Will asked about curcumin, turmeric for iron chelation. I do like turmeric, curcumin. It's not very well absorbed orally. The lotions out there, the turmeric lotions, I'm not a big fan of those because if you look in the ingredients, they actually have acrylamide in the ingredients. Acrylamide is an accepted carcinogen by various organizations. So I don't know why the company put acrylamide in there, why they felt the need to do that, but the main turmeric lotion that's out there, which is manufactured by Zymogen, I don't use it. I can't use it. You can get turmeric essential oil and rub that on. Mixing some of that with some magnesium lotion would be a good idea. I've made a magnesium lotion at home putting turmeric oil in it. You can add turmeric to Magahol, which is magnesium chloride flakes mixed with vodka. You absorb that better, and it doesn't sting your skin as much as mag oil. But I do like turmeric. I take it daily as part of another supplement I use, so I like it. Rachel asked about vitamin C. The first marker, which is the only one I'm going to give today, the first marker I get people up to is 3 grams a day of ascorbate or ascorbic acid. That is where I get people to first. If people can't tolerate that, I do not like liposomal. I don't trust it. I don't like anything nano. Ascorbic acid, taken in high doses like powders. There is a case study in the literature of ascorbic acid being acidic. I mean, ascorbic acid is like a pH of 3.7. That's pretty darn acidic, which may help stomach acid faster than a buffered vitamin C. But ascorbic acid, there is a little bit of research showing it may affect teeth enamel because it is really acidic, right? ascorbic acid. I like the mineral ascorbates better, magnesium ascorbate, potassium ascorbate, sodium ascorbate. Food-based stuff is great, but if you start totaling it up and you're trying to get 3 grams of ascorbate or ascorbic acid from food, good luck. It's going to be rough. And before you go, well, food used to have enough vitamin C in it. Like I posted the other day, a study from Australia. They looked at from 1948 to 1991. They looked at apples. There was a 50% decrease in the ascorbic acid in the apples in those 43 years. 50% less. Take a wild guess here. In the, 26 years since then? Do you think the problem has gotten better or worse? I would guess it's probably another 25% lower. So there may be 25% as much vitamin C in apples in Australia now as there was in 1948. Do you see the problem here? We have screwed up the food. The only reason a person like me evolved was out of necessity. The food doesn't have what it's supposed to in it. Don't blame me for using supplements. The food doesn't have it in it. And if you want to use food-based supplements, did you see the problem I just said with the food? If you want to use food-based supplements, the problem with food-based supplements is you got to eat an amount of supplements that's similar to food. It's too much. And then people complain about the pills, or I got to take this powder and make this shake, and it's awful and oh. Okay, so I do things based on what clients will do and what actually works. I tried that new, as an example, that new magnesium threonate, right? They brag about it crosses the blood-brain barrier and it's the most absorbable and all this stuff. It doesn't work on hair tests. It doesn't bring up magnesium. It doesn't help. It doesn't show up. So this is why we test, we don't guess. I can have people figure out the type of magnesium that works for them. We can say, this shows results. This is what works for you. I had a guy recently started with me. He was taking 3 different types of magnesium. Got his hair test back. His magnesium wasn't where it needed to be. Got him on some magnesium lotion. He tells me in an email a couple days later, I'm already sleeping better. Just because you put something down your throat doesn't mean you absorb it. So anyway. 3 grams a day is where I start people. I take on average about 8 grams a day myself. Today I'll probably take 12 grams because I have extra time to be home in the middle of the day and make my other vitamin C drink. The sicker people are, the more vitamin C they're going to be able to take. And the more vitamin C they take, the sooner they're going to feel better. But they may also not feel good in the interim because they may start detoxing. You start getting gas when you take vitamin C. That is the vitamin C getting the iron out of your gut. Where's the first place you'd absorb iron if you took too much? Your gut. So what's the first place that detoxes? Your gut. What does that look like when you have a bunch of iron coming out of your gut into your biome, into your bacteria? It starts feeding maybe not some great bacteria, maybe suppresses the good bacteria a little bit. Maybe the good bacteria starts coming back and it starts eating up stuff that was stuck in your gut. And so you start getting some gas. Oh no, is getting your health back worth some gas? I would hope so. But yeah, it goes away with time. It does. I have research showing that more iron in your gut results in less good bacteria and more bad bacteria. So you want to fix your gut, fix your iron. And magnesium. I have a study that links magnesium deficiency to leaky gut. That was in 1946, I believe, when that study came out. They used the words intestinal permeability. So yeah, so magnesium deficiency. I'm beginning the 2 biggest nutrients. If you watch this today and you just want to know what are the 2 biggest things I could do in terms of getting more of something in, magnesium and vitamin C. And then don't eat too much meat and don't take vitamin D supplements. Get out in the sun. Those would be the easy things. John's asking about mag water, magnesium bicarbonate, which always has to be in liquid. You cannot get magnesium bicarbonate pills. If anybody ever tries to sell them to you, that's not possible. I don't have anybody with magnesium bicarbonate showing good results because no one does it for any length of time because it's a pain in the butt to make that mag water as often as you need to. And I just haven't seen it. The other problem with magnesium bicarbonate is you're putting a lot of bicarbonate in the system, and it's actually probably iron. I'm working on the research on this, but when people are like, oh, the acid alkaline, that's the key to all health. I have some initial research that shows it's probably iron overload that's causing the acidity. And then they'll say, oh, it's meat that's causing you to become too acidic. Possibly, probably the iron, which I have researched. So the things that people blame meat, like saturated fat is bad in meat, and meat is too acidic, and they're just looking for scapegoats that fit their narrative. It's iron. That's the problem. And it's getting too much of that. So remember, I'm not anti-vitamin D, I'm not anti-iron. We need both to survive. Both are wonderful. It is when they are out of control and they are used without testing. If you want to take supplements, I mean, supplements are medications for nutrition. So you want to start messing with medications for nutrition, you might want to know what's going on first. That's why my saying, we test, we don't guess. So people wonder, why do I have to test? Why can't I just take these things? Aren't they okay for me? You can drink too much water and kill yourself. Of course you can mess up supplements. So I think I'm going to have to wrap it up here pretty soon. It's about 2:30 here. So, Will, if you're talking about Maggie Moe, if she's in the magnesium advocacy group, I have nothing to do with that group, and I find a lot of the advice there is not very helpful. I have clients who agree with me about that. So I've made some magnesium lotion. I can't remember the something Mama. What is that? Something. It's a magnesium lotion on. Somebody can type it up here. It's something Mama. I have the link other places, but that's the magnesium lotion I've made. I like the Life Flow magnesium lotion. And that's the one that I recommend most times. I'm figuring out if I can find something that's even better though. So anyway, I gotta get going. I gotta do my client work today. So I'm gonna wrap this up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll put the links in the description if you want to see the links to the Blue Zone stuff and the what was the other one? Oh, the cities for the Blue Zones. I'm not gonna put that link. Anyway, so again, I am a doctor. I'm a licensed naturopathic physician in Arizona. I do clinical nutrition. That is the treatment of disease with nutrition. I am not your doctor unless you are working with me. So if you decide to take anything I've said on this presentation and run with it and do stuff with it and you don't feel good on it, that's on you. I'm not telling anyone to do anything. And again, if you want to get in touch with my office is, the website is nutritionrestored.com. Julie can be reached at admin@nutritionrestored.com, and our phone number is 520-577-6888. Hope you guys had a fun time, and we will hope to see you again. Bye.